Hi everybody, Carol Garrison here with Carol's Creative Escape. I am an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And I'm so grateful that you've taken time out of your busy schedules to join me tonight for another Make It Live, or Make It Monday, live video tutorial, I guess it would be. I have been making cards for over 30 years, doing various techniques, and have most recently and long-term have been Zelda's joining us again tonight. Have been focusing on rubber stamping using Stampin' Up! Products. I love the products because they, the color coordination is so great for all of the products, and I think you're going to see some of that in the cards that I'm making tonight. But really my main goal with my video tutorials is basically to spread joy one card at a time. It might be because I've given somebody one of the cards that I've made. It might be because I helped somebody realize that, hey, I can make a card. It's not that hard. And either one of those is a win in my book. I didn't always think of myself as being terribly creative. And one of the things that I have learned through my making cards is that I really am. You just have to have a little bit of faith in yourself. It doesn't have to be complicated. Just have to have faith in yourself. So that's really my goal with my live video tutorials here. It is Monday, June 10th. 2024, and I hope everybody's had a great week. We had a pretty mellow week last week. Got to spend some time outside this weekend, both in terms of having some outdoor meals, which my husband and I always like to do, and just getting some things done around the house. Hi Karen, thanks for joining. So it's just been a pretty good week that way. We are getting ready for some changes happening around our house in terms of things moving in, things moving out, and that sort of thing. But it always just requires a little bit more work when you're doing that, because you find out how dirty some things are or how dusty some things are. But we will be doing good as we get prepared for that. So I hope everybody's had a great week. I am just going to jump into our videos tonight. So please excuse me as I switch cameras around and a little bit of jiggling here. Just a second. Okay, hopefully I'm kind of on target. Let me just double check my iPad to make sure that I'm where I want to be. Hey, I'm even it wasn't my greatest transition. Whoops, and I didn't turn my volume down, but let's just see what we can do in terms of getting everything on camera here so that we can get started. Tonight's card is featuring one of our gorgeous new designer series paper. And initially when I saw this, I'm like, do I like it? Don't I like it? And I kind of had to ask myself that question. And the more I looked at it, I love, love, love this paper. And I am talking about the, I had the name and now I forgot it. It is the Mediterranean Blooms, and it does actually come with a coordinating stamp set. Tonight, I am just using the paper to make my cards, and I've brought in sentiments from other stamp sets, but I will show you this paper. It's found on page 35 in the annual catalog, and this is what it looks like. So it comes with a stamp set that picks up the kind of the orange theme in the paper. Pretty much matches this set of flowers right here, as well as some of the individual oranges. And then it does come with this gorgeous set of dies as well. Like I said, right now I just have the paper, although I kind of wish I'd had the opal round assortments here. It could have added a little bit of color. And I think where I struggled with this at first is how do I really feel about this dark blue against this other color stuff? And I'm going to show you a couple of cards that I think might answer that question for you. But before we get to that, let me show you this paper in all its beauty. Unfortunately, one of the things I don't think Stampin' Up! Always does a great job on is making their papers show their true beauty in the catalogs. And that's just part of you know, photography and things like that. Our designer papers are always prettier in person. So we've got this one that's just got clumps of oranges. These are great for easy fussy cutting, that type of thing. And on the back side, well, you know what? I'm just going to show you the front sides to start with. So we've got this one. This one is kind of more of an all over orange pattern. And then we've got a similar one to that first orange one that I showed you, but with lemons. And again, a very easy one to fussy cut out. All over lemon pattern. And then this is a combination of the lemons and oranges. I really like these colors together. And then we've got this real pretty delicate one. It's kind of got like a boho blue, really light boho blue background almost to it. Although I bet you could put a gray and it would look pretty with that as well. But what's interesting about this paper is all of the back sides are blue, and it's balmy blue, boho blue, and night of navy for the most part. Let me just double check that. Yeah, those would be the three blues that are in here. So you've got this pattern, you've got really big square patterns, and it would be so easy just to cut out along the squares and use that as a focal point on your card. Great background piece here with just all these. They're actually little daisies. Let me see if I can get it up closer to the camera so you can see. It doesn't show up that well when it's further away. Kind of just looks like dots. And then we've got this slightly smaller pattern in all of those blues. Another kind of all over blue and white pattern. And this is just kind of diagonal lines or X's, depending on how you look at it. And then we've got this real pretty light, smaller print as well. So again, this is the Mediterranean Blooms Designer Series paper, and the colors in here are Balmy Blue, Boho Blue, Cajun Craze, Daffodil Delight, Early Espresso, Garden Green, Lemon Lolly, Night of Navy, Old Olive, Peach Pie, and Pumpkin Pie. So kind of a lot of the just real pretty colors. So I knew I had an event tonight, and so I was going to kind of be pushed for time. And so I decided to sort of follow the practice of keeping it simple. And I've made two different cards. And I'm going to show you how to do both of these cards because they are easy cards. But I wanted to show you both the lemon and the orange version of the cards, sort of. So I am using for my sentiments tonight the Unbounded Love bundle. And that includes 25 different sentiments. Some bigger, some smaller. A lot of them can kind of pair up a little bit. And then we've got this gorgeous set of dies. You've seen me use this a couple times already that fit some of the different sentiments in here. Today I'm actually using this one as the basic white piece on this card. And then this one for that outside orange piece. So we get a real nice layered look. They do have stitching around it. So you can kind of see that there. So it adds just a little bit of detail. One thing that I want to let you know is right now Stampin' Up! Does have a special on our bundles. So typically bundles, the first year they're out, are 10% off. Right now Stampin' Up! Has an additional 10% off that. So you can get some really good bundles using a purchase right now and save 20% actually on the bundles that are included in that sale. So it's a great way to get some dies and stamps. So just keep that in mind. So I am using the, where is it on here? This little hello is the sentiment that I'm using for this card. And then the other stamp set that I'm using today is Sweetly Scripted. This stamp is actually in the, it's an online exclusive, and it's just great. It's a, the red rubber stamp, but just these really great long greetings. And even though I did not do it on my card, one thing I want to remind you of is just because our brain says sentiments need to go this way on the card, there's no reason you couldn't put something like this going the length of the card and having your decoration here. So I'm hoping to get a card put together like that. That doesn't relate to my cards today at all, but just a little food for thought. So let's start with this card because it's a fairly simple card to make, and we are going to use and make a version using Daffodil Delight and Garden Green. And I have pre-cut my 2 circles out of here, and I did pre-tie my bow. I like to use 2 pieces of twine when I'm making little bows out of that. Just makes it a little fuller. So that's my style. And in this card, I'm going to use the lemon piece. So let me give you the measurements real quick, and then we are going to make this card. So first, I've got, you can either use 5.5 by 8.5 or a 4 1/4 by 11. This happened to be in my stash, so I'm using 4 1/4 by 11 for this particular card. And then you want to score it at the halfway mark. So for this size, it's at 5.5. If you did a 5.5 by 8.5 card, you'd be scoring it at 4 1/4. My garden green layer measures 4 by 5 1/4. And then my piece of designer series paper measures 3 3/4 by 5. And then I have a piece of basic white that's 4 by 5 1/4 for the inside of my card. And again, I just used my scraps to create these 2 pieces. So to start with, let's go ahead and stamp our hello sentiment. I am going to use Garden Green for this one. And it is a photopolymer stamp, and so you do get better images if you stamp it on, I like to use my piercing mat. It just gives a little bit of cushion. You could also use the fabulous glass studio mat that Stampin' Up! Had as a special. The great news is that is going to be available again for people to purchase. So yay to that. So I'm just stamping a simple hello, and I like to stamp my sentiments first so that I'm sure the ink can dry, because if I pick them up too soon, it seems like I get a little smear action going because I haven't been patient enough to let the ink dry. Anybody else have that issue? And then I am going to put my stamp away right away. I find if I clean them and put them away, I'm less likely to lose them. And that's all the stamping for this card. And so it really is just going to come down to assembling the card. So I'm going to grab my bone folder, and we'll fold this along the score line. And you know, for a while, I was having a really hard time getting my score lines in just the right place and always ending up with just a little bit of edge. So a tip for you is that when I'm putting my paper on here to do the score line, I'm going to try to show you here so I can get it in. I found that I was going just below the line so I could still see it. And then I'd always end up with just a teeny bit overhang on one side. So I'm now finding if I actually cover up that line and do my score, I know this sounds very simple, but it took me a while to figure it out. If I go right up to the line, kind of covering it just, you know, so I can't see it, then I'm getting it right where I need it when I go to score it so that I don't have that funky overhang really on either side. You know, down at the bottom here. It might be off still just a teeny bit, but not a big deal. So that's my little tip for today. And we're going to add some adhesive. And remember, when you're using the seal, just a light touch and kind of that check mark at the end. And then the other thing is, if you look at opposite corners, if those line up pretty well, you're going to have your layer centered. We can set that aside, and we are just going to add adhesive to our designer series paper. I don't know, these oranges and lemons just remind me of spring and warmth and sunshine. So we're going to add that layer on. The cards tonight are very simple, but you know what? Sometimes simple is what you need, and they can still carry a lot of wow and punch to them just because of the paper or layout that you use. Cards don't have to be super fancy to be impressive. Sometimes they're gorgeous just in their simplicity. So be sure to keep that in mind when you're making your cards. And then the finishing touches on this, we'll just add a little adhesive to the back of this card, or the back of this sentiment. And I'm going to center it. And I found this circle was super easy to center and keep a pretty even border on it. Sometimes it doesn't feel that way, but in this case it was. And now I'm going to take my I'm hoping to take my dimensionals. I thought I had them out. Let me get some here. All right. So I've got some left over from a kit. I'm just going to pop up a couple of them. And I really want this to be kind of discreet and not the focal point. I want my paper to be the focal point. So then the other thing that I'm going to do is bring in just a little glue dot. And I like to put them, right underneath the knot of my bow. And when I pull it up, I kind of scrunch it so it doesn't hang out. And pop it down. And if any of you are curious, this tool or storage kit comes from the Country Hive, and I don't get paid for this or anything, but it's a great storage kit for your adhesives. It can sit in there. Your different tools can go in here. There's room for I have an extra tear and tape right now, but room for your adhesives, a little slot here for your glue dots to come out of. So again, it comes from the Country Hive. If you're interested, you can go right out to that website. All right, here's that first card already done. So quick, easy, but because of the beauty of this paper, it really does pop and create a lot of bright. I think this would just bring happiness to whoever would receive it just because it is so bright in the color. All right. And now the second card that I want to share with you is really showing you how do you use that blue paper along with the lemons. I personally have always loved blues and yellows together. And so this was sort of a match made for me. I cut out the lemons, just did a little fussy cutting of the lemons from the designer series paper. And then added a layer of the blue behind it to help that pop, along with that great sentiment and some embellishment, and boom, you've got a simple card. I did also dress up the inside of this card with just a little scrap of paper to kind of help carry things through. So let me give you measurements for this card, but this time, there's my other dimensionals I was looking for. This time we're going to be doing it in pumpkin pie. So again, I've got a 5.5 by 8.5 inch piece of cardstock scored at 4 1/4. We'll go ahead and fold this over and burnish it. And then I have a piece of designer series paper that measures 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. Let me just verify that because I did not write these down this time. Yep, 3 1/4 by 4 1/2. And this card layout's going to work with any of your designer series paper. You just need to make sure the things coordinate. And then I also have a piece of 4 by 5 1/4 for the inside of my card. And in this case, this scrap I think was a 1/4 inch, and it just had more to do with how I was cutting my paper. In this one, I've got a 1/2 inch strip of paper, and it goes the full length. This was a scrap, so it didn't go the full length of my card, so I just centered it. No big deal. This one, it will cover the length of the lining or the inside of my card. And then instead of fussy cutting those lemons, I fussy cut the oranges, and that just added that layer of dimension that I was looking for. So let's start by stamping our sentiment. First, I've got a piece of scrap basic white, and it measures a 1/2 inch. I don't even know how long it is. And I am going to use the happy birthday sentiment this time. On the original card, the sentiment that I used was "a million thanks." This time I'm going to do happy birthday. And I'm using my Night of Navy ink. And I am going to ink up the whole thing. I'm stamping on some paper because I know I'm going to run off the edges just a teeny bit. And it's kind of hard sometimes to see where I'm stamping. So we're going to hope for the best here. And had I not rocked it, that would have been really good. Thank goodness there's a second side. Sometimes with narrower stamps, you do rock it, and that's all right. That's why we've got 2 sides to every piece of paper. All right, let's try this again. Shoot. Nope, I smeared it again, I think. Yeah, I felt it wiggle. Good thing I have lots of scraps here. I don't get rid of oh, speak, Carol. I tend not to get rid of a lot of my basic white scraps, keeping just about any size, simply because you can always use them for stuff like this. Whoops. And this one, I actually got it stuck in the lid. So let's just do a quick trim. I'm going to get my ink out of the way. And in fact, I am going to clean this block real quick, only because I did pick up that one edge. And we'll start with a clean transition here. The only thing I'm going to do is cut off a little bit from the end so that I'm dealing with straight edges. And then again, I'm going to line this up. I had it at 1/2 inch before. I think I'm going to go to 3/8 of an inch, only because this particular sentiment has letters that go up and down, if you know what I mean. So I get it lined up, and I'm just going to run it through. I actually think I got it a little bit wide on the one end. That's never fun. So let's try this again at 3/8 of an inch. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this one trimmed. I might have to start over. Yeah, it's going to get too rough on the edges. All right, well, this isn't working so great here, Carol. I'm supposed to be showing you how easy it is. We'll take this piece. And again, I'm going to go to 3/8 of an inch. We'll close it down. And then I press before I start cutting, because then it gets it nice and secure. All right, now we've got our little trim piece. And we'll go back to our notebook. We'll go back to our ink pad. And just light taps. And we'll try this sentiment again. There. Okay, we're not touching it. It actually worked really well. So we'll set that aside. I do find that sometimes the darker ink colors take just a little bit longer to dry. So again, I do recommend that you try to do your stamping first so it can dry while you're doing your assembly part. And just using my Simply Chamois to get ink off. One thing with our clear mount stamps, this is a super sticky label, so you do not really want to leave these on your blocks even overnight. It can be harder to get them off, so just keep that in mind. You don't want them to stick and then kind of ruin the stamp as you pull it off. I think when I rearranged, I didn't leave enough room. There we go. All right. So now we have our stamping done. We can set that aside. And we'll come back, and the only other thing we need to do is assemble this layer. And because I am going right up to the edge, I'm going to grab my silicone mat so that when I take my adhesive, I can just run it right from one end to the other, and it doesn't matter if I go off because it's easy to clean off of this mat. You could even put little pieces and kind of let it adhere to the mat without creating any problems if you don't want to lose them in your workspace. It's a great way to keep track of little pieces of stuff. And I'm just going to adhere this and then just grab my paper snips real quick to cut off this little tidbit. I love to use paper scraps because it uses up those little scraps, but it creates a real bright touch to the inside of the card without a lot of work. All right, so for assembling this card, again, we'll put some adhesive on this inside piece. And you can change the size of that strip in the middle to be thicker or thinner. If you're not one that likes to write a whole ton of stuff inside your cards, if you make it a little thicker, you're going to have less writing space there. And nobody's going to know the difference. All right, then we are taking this piece, and I did do a subtler pattern with this one than that, you know, not quite as bold, simply because I wanted the oranges to stand out. And I'm just centering this on the card. So again, this piece of designer series paper is 3 1/4, complete with cat hair, 3 1/4 by, oh come on, 3 1/4 by 4.5 inches. And then I am going to pop this up onto dimensionals, and I kind of put them wherever things jutted out just a little bit, just to make sure that parts of it didn't kind of collapse on me. And then I put one in the middle too, just because it's a bigger piece. And so we will peel the backs off of this. This is actually a lot of dimensionals for me to use on one embellishment, but because of the weird shape, I like to make sure, like I said, that I'm going to have everything popped up correctly. And I'm going to put this one slightly up, but centered across this piece, so part of it is going to overhang. And then we'll come in with this piece. Now it's a little bit wide on either side, and if I were to measure this, I'm guessing it's going to come out kind of somewhere around 4 5/8. And this is actually 4 1/4 inches wide. And so I'm probably just going to take 3/8 of an inch off each end. And that way the lines, you know, these tail pieces will still be centered. And I don't have to worry about doing that funky little figuring out the math where I'm only off by 5/8. It's just simpler math. All right, so we'll go down to 3/8 of an inch, cut that tail piece off, and we'll twist it around and do the same thing. And now we've got our sentiment for the front of the card. I did pop this one up on dimensionals too. And again, because it's a longer piece, I put 3 dimensionals on here just to keep that center from sagging. And I'm having problems with these backs today. There we go. I'll bring my card back in, and I'm just going to center this in the space from the bottom of the oranges and from the bottom of that designer series paper layer, just so that I'm sure I've got kind of that border on either side. I don't know if it's necessary or not. I just like how it looks better. And then I'm going to grab my take your pick tool, and I've got a little bit of putty. I thought this was empty, but apparently there was enough pressure to push some more out. And oh dear, I lost one too. I spent some time last night with my blends coloring in so that I could have some orange embellishments. So I'm just going to stick these on my card. If you use your blends, it will work really well to add color, but I find sometimes it doesn't dry super fast. And so I am actually going to cheat at this point and take one off in silver and color it while it's right on my paper. A gutsy move because I could go off the edges. When I'm coloring rhinestones, I do like to use the wider end. And I tend to use the darker color of the color I'm trying to achieve. And I sort of just keep going over it until I get, oh, look what I just did to my hard label that I tried to make. All right, no problem. We're just now going to go lightly along the edge. On the top and the bottom. And I'm actually kind of just dragging my blend pen along the edge of the paper rather than putting the tip right on the paper. It's the edge of the brush. The only risk is that you might actually get some on your paper, so we're going to quit while we're ahead. And we've just added a little border. So remember, when you do something like that, it's not a mistake. It is merely a chance to embellish your cards. It happens to all of us. We've put a lot of work in it, so the last thing we want to do is throw that away. So there's a quick tip for fixing up some of those blurbs, and I'm just going to ignore that line that I put down there. So here is the second of the two cards tonight. One with lemons, one with oranges, and then we come back and we have these two cards as well. I think this would make a really lovely gift set to give to somebody. They look different, but they're very bright and cheery. Try to get them all in on the camera there. Very bright and cheery, and if you put them in a little gift bag or made a little container for them, I think anybody would be really happy to get these either as a set or even just to get one in the mail with a quick hello. So I hope you are inspired by these cards, and remember that sometimes it's okay to keep it simple. Sometimes our time requires that it be simpler. Sometimes it's just nice to have a simple card and let the paper do all the work for you. So take care, everybody. My plan next week is to work with some masculine paper in a bundle called Adventurous Sky. It's kind of airplane themed. So we'll see what we come up with for our creations next week. Take care, everybody. Have a great week, and we will see you next Monday. Bye-bye.